All right, guys, today we are going to learn how I use my Ricoh GR III with street photography. There's two things we're going to look at, both in the menu as well as the settings on the camera. There are a few things here that you need to know. First of all, you can't see it up here, the top shutter button, of course. Your on-off button, of course. Those are pretty well self-explanatory. There is a dial in the front, right in front of your shutter button. Of course, that is what you would use for your shutter or your aperture, depending on which mode you are at, and I will show you that. You can also use it to scroll up and down, or you can use your finger, as you see, with your touch shutter. So a couple things we're going to run through here. First of all, how I've got my camera set up. And we start with our focus. Now you can select any focus here that you want to select. If we go with, say, select, you can see there, if you have this set to touch focus, then of course you can just simply touch and focus wherever you want to focus. So if we go to, let's say, auto area autofocus, which is what it comes standard. It's just going to basically select what it wants to select. There you can see the little green. It'll select my hand here, for instance. So I'm not going to go through all of these in focus. The one I use, and I have it as default for when I'm using this as a regular camera, a regular point and shoot camera, not using snap focus, I will put it on tracking autofocus. And what you see here is once it tracks on something, it's going to stay tracking on that, regardless of where that goes in the frame. And this is great when you have, let's say you have your subject up here and you want to focus on their face, and then you want to move the camera around to get something else in there. It defaults back to the center. So if there's nothing there, it's going to go back to the center. So that's what I typically have that set on. Now you can set what you want. And again, you've got tracking autofocus, continuous autofocus, manual focus, snap focus. That's what you see in all of my videos from video number, I believe it's number 7 all the way through 18, 19, 20, something like that. Just straight snap focus. I'm going to explain this one to you. When you have it on snap focus only, then it'll allow you to set your distance, and you can do that a couple ways. You can hit your macro button up here and then move your shutter dial that's right in front of your shutter button. And when we do that, I typically just leave mine locked in at either 1 or 1.5. Most of mine was 1.5, but I would probably go to just 1 meter. And therefore, everything from a meter on, depending on your what your aperture is, will be either in focus or not in focus. This is not going to be in focus right now because I'm too close to this object, and the way I'm set up here, I just can't do it. So it'll take it, but it'll be blurry. So it does not read your focus. It does not read your exposure. It sets it up, and regardless of whether that's set or not, it's going to take that shot. That's kind of neat. That's great for stealth photography. However, if you just want to use it as a regular camera, of course, then you go back to, let's say, tracking focus. Now, this is where I'm going to get out of line here a little bit, or out of order here a little bit, to explain how I have mine set up. Again, when you're walking around, if you just have it on tracking, which again, if you just point it at somebody and follow them around, it's going to take that shot. And again, it's going to go back there to center point if you don't. Now, I have my function button here set to snap. Now, if I'm walking around, I can use this camera just like I would any other camera, set my manual, shutter speed, my aperture, my ISO, if I want it auto, whatever. But if I go and hit this FN button, it immediately goes into snap focus mode. And then if I hit it again, it'll go back to my tracking mode. Again, if it's in snap focus mode, this shutter focus does not work. It just simply will not work. And there you go. So, and if I want to go back to regular, I just go ahead and hit that FN button again, function button, and it goes back to regular. That's one way I've got it set up. Now, another way, a couple other ways you can do this. I'm using the special functions first, and then I will run through all of the menu functions. Up here on your adjust dial, that is right behind your on-off switch and underneath the rotation dial up there that lets you set whether you're in a program, manual, user, or what have you. This I go to a lot. This allows me to customize this camera along with the function button that, as I said, I've got set just for snap. So no matter what, I'm in snap mode. Now I'm out of snap mode. But I can also change some other things. If you hit this adjust button, now it gives you 5 things to customize. You can put 5 different controls on here. I've chosen these controls for street photography. First of all, my touch autofocus. It's the first one. A quick way to remember this is anything that if it's got the touch there, that's for the back screen because it's asking you how do you want to use your touch function. So if it's got the finger, that means it is your back display that you're talking about, and I'll tell you about those options. The focus, that would be, of course, the front of the lens. That tells it how it wants to do the focusing. So that would be adjusted. That's your focus. That would be adjusted back here. And you can go to all those things we just went through there, the autofocus. And again, let me go back to that, and I can just change these on the fly. I can go to select autofocus pinpoint, tracking, which is, again, where it would normally be set. And I can hit this button if I want and go to snap, anything I want to do. Technically, I typically wouldn't use this much because I'm going to be usually set as I'm walking around in tracking autofocus, or I'm going to hit this and go immediately to snap. So that's the first. Whoops. Okay. Let me clear out of here. Okay. Now we're back. So again, to hit this adjust button up here, you just push it in, and then you can turn the dial here as well. So we're on the focus. We can change our focus on the fly there. The next one is our metering. Now, this is important because you might change this depending on your situation. Here's our multi-segment metering. That means it's going to take, it's going to read all around everything and make a judgment call. If you go to center weighted, it's only going to go basically wherever your pinpoint focus is, whether it's up here, if it's tracking, it's only going to, well, basically it's going to use this center here and decide. And because usually when you point your camera, you're pointing at something in the center. Now, if you go to spot, of course, that will go anywhere. Let's go to spot. Basically, I still have it on tracking, but with the metering, the tracking is the focus. The metering is what we're talking about here, how much light it's going to let in. And it's only going to go wherever you have that, whether it's on my hand or whatever, that's what it's going to meter. Okay? Now, the last one here, highlight weighted. You've heard me talk about highlight weighted. Highlight weighted would be if you're outside, you've got a very sunny day, a bright day, you don't want a lot of contrast, you want a normal photo, then you would put it on highlight weighted, and it will prevent you from blowing out your highlights. Because, again, the rule of thumb is you can always bring your shadows up. You can always retrieve the shadows, meaning if it's too dark, you can go in Lightroom or you can edit in camera and bring those shadows out. You can never, ever regain what you've blown out on the bright side, though. So if you shoot into the sun, of course, you're getting just a white hole, and you'll never get any detail in that white hole. If you shoot into a light bulb, you'll never get any detail out of that. If you're on the street photography, and you take a photo, everything else, the sky and everything is washed out. You can bring those shadows down, but you're still always going to have a washed out sky. You're rarely going to retrieve those. Again, this camera, it will, but again, if you want to err on the side of having it taken care of in camera, go to highlight weighted mode. Typically, I will go between highlight weighted and center weighted. It really just depends on how I feel, how the photos are coming out. But highlight weighted, it'll look like your photos are underexposed. But again, as soon as you bring them into Lightroom, Photoshop, something like that, you just bring the exposure up a little bit. And this camera has great dynamic range, so you would have no problem. I'm going to leave that on highlight weighted. Now the next one here, whoops, sorry about that. Now the next one here we're going to go to is our drive. The reason is, and I'll explain that to you, you have drive over here on your dial, but I keep it here, and I'll tell you why, because I take it off the dial. But at any rate, you have your single frame shooting, continuous shooting, that would be burst mode. You have your bracketing, if you're interested in that, that can be very useful. You have your multi-exposure. I don't know who uses that. That's if you want to put a picture in a picture type of thing. Interval shooting, that would be, for instance, I've got this set up to take a shot every second for eternity. You can change that, and again, you would hit OK, and now you're in that mode. But let's go back up. If you want to change this information right here, you have to go ahead and hit either the function button. You see it right here. It says that. You either hit the function button. Now it lets you change. Now you'll hit the right arrow. Now you can change this. This would be an hour and a second, okay? Or this is just so many seconds, however many seconds you want it. Leave it at 1 second. Number of shots, you can go from 2 to 99. Again, FN 2 to 99. So you have to go up here to 2, or excuse me, you have to go to the FN button. Now you can change that to 2 shots, 99 shots. That's if you want to keep a short one going. Let's go back to, we'll keep it at infinity. And then you just basically stop it whenever you want. And if we go back, you can start it whenever you want or set a time. Well, you can start it now or set a time. And that would be your start time countdown. Okay, so that's something, if you're interested, you would need to dig in more. This is an interval composite, meaning whatever you shoot stays in the camera. It'll create the video in the camera of the interval shootings or interval shots, but you can only use it in camera. I don't believe you can export it, so I wouldn't find that of any value. I typically always leave mine on single frame shooting. Okay, the last one here of the 5, and these are just easy to get to as you're on the fly. The last one I have is set, it would be the image control, which I call the filters. And that would be, I have mine set on positive film. This is only for JPEG output only. If you use any of these filters and then you put this in Lightroom or Photoshop, it's just going to go back to the standard color, which is right here. But if you want to also, as I do, shoot, as I've started doing, shoot in RAW and JPEG just to see what kind of JPEG you can get, you have these options. And there we had standard, vivid, black and white, soft black and white, hard black and white, high contrast black and white, positive film, which seems to be the most popular. Let me just make sure we're in focus. Okay. Bleach bypass, retro, HDR, cross-processing, just some different colors, and then you can adjust those to add your own. Again, I'm going back up to positive where I'm going to leave that. So, again, those are all accessible from up here, and I'll show you how to basically take care of those, but these would be things I would use on the fly. Now, also with the setup, before we get into the menu, over here, on the dial. This is your macro. When you push this dial up, it's macro. You can see the little flower over here. That's macro mode. You have to hit it again. A lot of people will leave it in that macro mode accidentally. So you hit it again, and now you're back in your regular mode. Your ISO is to the left, and when I hit that, you see a very little change there. Let me go ahead and get back out of that. Whoops. Let me get back out of that. And what you see here, let me hit that ISO button. That's going to be over. And when you do that, if you hit FN, then you're going to be at 1600, but that's changeable. Right now I've got it set on ISO auto, which you see down here. These are the actual camera readings right here. I've got it on auto. If I were to go up here, you see that ISO auto has changed now because it needs more light, now less light, now less light. But if I wanted to lock it in, like say I want to go with long exposure, I want to go with 100, all I really have to do here is hit FN. You see there, FN 1600, hit FN. Now I can change that to whatever I want. And let's say I go down to 100, which I wouldn't do in this situation, and then I can take that shot and it'll stay at 100. Now, if I want to, now it's locked in at 100. If I want to change that back to auto, all I have to do is hit this over again. And then if you see there, ISO auto on the FN, I hit that. Now we're back to auto. So simple as that. You may have to rewatch that to get that. Hopefully I explained that properly. The down arrow, a waste, a complete waste of space here. This is your auto balance. I don't know why anybody would, I never changed the auto balance. I guess if you're really into photography and you're into all that, you could do that. I leave this on multi-auto white balance. You have the regular auto white balance like every camera, but on this one I like the multi-auto white balance because like right now I've got sunlight coming in, I've got a little light off my flash going up here to help illuminate that a little bit. I don't know how great of a job it's doing. And you can have studio lighting, but it basically melds it all together and comes up with a good reading as opposed to going up here and it reading only one of the lights and then therefore it may not adjust right. I'm not sure how all that technology works and don't really care. I leave it on multi-auto white balance. The only thing, again, that kind of irks me is that, you know, they lock that in. You cannot change that down button. You can change your ISO to something else, and you can change the next one to something else. ISO I'm leaving alone because it's just, I do change that often on the fly, so I'll just leave that alone. The only one here I'm going to change is the drive button. If you click over, you can see I've got this set now to go to this is the 28 millimeter, this is the 35 millimeter crop, and this is the 50 millimeter crop. So you lose pixels. This is not a zoom, just to clear that up. This is 28 millimeter focal length, and it is 24 megapixels. If you go to 35, which a lot of people are used to 35 coming off of Sony's or Fuji's or something like that, then but you lose megapixels down to 15. Would never bother me. I don't think you would ever notice the difference at all, ever. Might not even notice the difference of 50 at 7 megapixels. Now again, I don't have very good lighting here and all that, so these don't look very good, but if you go out and experiment with that. Okay, so you hit it again, it goes back to 28. Now how did I do that? I've got just boom like that. It makes it very easy access for me. That's how I've got my camera set up. Now we'll go into the menu and I'll show you what's in the menu and how I moved those things over to the external back part of the camera. Okay, now we're going to look at the internal menu on the Ricoh GR3. When you turn this menu on, first thing you come up with is your focus settings. We touched on that earlier. And again, you can adjust these however you want to adjust these. Okay, now our second is face detection. I leave that on. You can put it on only when it's an auto area autofocus. I just leave it on. If you're on the street, it certainly can be helpful. If you're taking pictures of family, friends, modeling, all that stuff, it can be helpful. Assist light, that is off because that way people don't see it flashing in their face if you're trying to be stealthy about it. But if you're in a modeling situation, shooting the family, the kids, the dog or something, you could turn that on. In default, I leave it off. Snap focus distance, as I said, that can be changed on the fly. I typically will leave that at 1 or 1.5 meters. Full snap is off. And that's because I access it again by hitting, I've got it set to my FN button, my function button, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Focus peaking, don't need that unless you're doing manual focus, and if you're doing manual focus, you probably can figure that out on your own. AFC is kind of irrelevant unless you're really advanced. The auto magnification for manual focus, I've got it off. You can turn it on. Again, if you're into manual focusing settings and all that, you're a little more advanced than this tutorial, so you can probably figure that out or let me know if you need information on that, and I will certainly try to help you with that. The next one we're going to is our exposure mode, which I've got set to manual. You can put this anywhere you want. I prefer manual. You can do program. This certainly doesn't hurt anything. You just want to make sure that when you're on the street, you're able to set your shutter speed at a minimum of 400 or 500, or things will be blown out, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. The auto exposure metering, as I said, I leave that between highlight weighted and center weighted. Again, you can get that up here on your adjust. Again, see that's instead of digging in your menu here, like I said, I just hit the adjust button and boom, right there, my drive, there's my AE metering we were just talking about, and it's on highlight weighted. So let's go back to our menu, and there it is. Easier to get to by just going up there than to dig into this. Now, the ISO setting, this is important. You hear me talk about my ISO settings and my upper limit. So I've got this ISO set to auto. When I shoot in manual, and I adjust both my shutter and my aperture, but I do use ISO auto. I've got this set at 64,000 just to play with it here, just so it would not go because I'm in a low light situation. But I typically would go to about 6,400, usually no higher than 32, sometimes even 1250. I think in the last couple I only went to 1250. You really don't need to go far. But as you can see, this will go all the way up to 102,400. Can't imagine what a shot would look like at that, and this will be just completely whited out. It's set at auto, and it went to 1250 on its own. So if I were to, well, I can't do that. If I were to flip it over here to to change my ISO. Now I can hit it here. It's on auto, but I can change this all the way to 102,400. And in order to do that, I would need to really increase my shutter speed here to about 2,000. And look at that grain. Wow, not sure how well that shows up. For cool black and white, that might be okay, but not for us here. Okay, now we are back on auto. Okay, so that is our, okay, now we want to set our upper limit. This way, when I'm on the street, I'm shooting in manual. I'm shooting, I adjust my aperture usually to f8 or f9 to give me some great depth of field there. But I don't want my ISO to max out or be real grainy. So I'm just going to go ahead, and again, you can move these down, touch them with your hand if you want. I typically don't like to go higher than 1250. 1250 seems to work pretty well, but you can certainly go higher than that, especially on a cloudy day. 3200 is fine. I'm going to leave it right there for right now. Okay, ISO auto lower limit. Don't really understand why you would, I guess there would be situations, but I leave it there. Minimum shutter speed at 125. This would be if you're in aperture priority or program. It will not drop below 1/25 of a second. If I'm on the street, I would jack that up to like 320, 400, 500, something like that. But right now, I just generally, since I never use aperture priority or program, I just leave it at 1/25. Nothing wrong with using aperture or program. Okay, flash mode, pretty self-explanatory. Put a flash on, it's turned on. You can also, I would always leave it to flash on with red eye. Actually, that's what I would do. Okay. Now, ND filter. Your ND filter, I leave it on auto, but if you wanted to slow your shutter, meaning, for instance, with the waterfall I shot, I definitely had the filter on, and it's just a two-stop filter, but it's just enough that even on a sunny day, as I said, with your f16 aperture, you can get down to about 1/5, maybe even 1/3 of a second. That's just slow enough. If you look at my waterfall video, you'll see it's just slow enough to slow down that water to make it kind of silky smooth. But anyway, in normal circumstances, I leave it on auto. Auto exposure compensation is off for me. Linking the auto exposure and auto focus point, I leave that on. That's basically when you half press your shutter. That's what that's doing. Leave that on. White balance, as I said, leave it alone at auto, multi-auto. I never do fine tuning. I don't mess with white balance. I don't mess with this still or movie button. Macro mode, you would not turn it on here. Again, you can just access it there very quickly on the back of the camera. Here's your drive mode. Again, I leave mine set. But also in the drive mode, I do want to point out, whether you get to it from the adjust button or here, there's your drive button. If you want to change it, you click it, and then you can choose what you want there. Or you can also, if you want a 2-second timer or a 10-second timer, hit your down, or you just touch this, and now you have that your timer is off, or there's the 2-second or 10-second. I use the 2-second all the time when I do real estate photography or any sort of long exposure photography. That way you click it. Well, let's leave it on there. So I'll take this shot, 1/1000, 2/1000, and there we have it. Well, of course, I don't have the settings quite right here, but let's turn that off. Okay, and so there's our drive. Now, like I said, just to be clear, I've got it set up here. All you got to do is hit that and move over. There's our drive. All right, so let's go back. And again, if you hit on yours right now, if you hit this button right here, as you can see, it's even got the decal there. I'm not sure why they did that, the imprint. Yours would be drive there. I've got it set to crop. AA filter simulator, not sure, don't care. File format, very important. I would be at least at RAW. I always shoot RAW. Everything I shoot is RAW. I'm just starting, because of this camera only, started using also a JPEG, just so that there's an output. I'm just playing with the filters there right now, positive film, might use black and white, just to play around with it to see what I can get out of camera with this camera. But in general, I'm always going to edit in RAW. And then it asks you your aspect ratio. You can only go 1:1 or 3:2. Don't make the mistake of experimenting with 1:1, thinking that when you get them in Lightroom or Photoshop, you can convert back to 3:2. They don't. They actually lock in at 1:1. I found that out the hard way. So I leave it at 3:2, and then I can crop down to square. 1:1 is square. Okay, here's the crop. Now, you can use this manually and set it at 35 or 50. that would be a pain in the butt to have to go in and do that every time. So again, I've got it set to where it's just right here, 35 and 50. Okay, so the JPEG, I told you, I use a JPEG. If you're using JPEG output, you have to choose a size. This is the largest size that this camera will output, 6,000 by 4,000. That's the same size as the RAW file. But I would never use a JPEG that size. If I'm going to blow up a print or need it that size, I'm going to use the RAW file because you just have better quality. But if you're only shooting JPEG, and a lot of people do only shoot JPEG, then you would want to use 6,000 by 4,000. You can see here 1920 by 1280. That size, that'll get you, I mean, you can put that on a video because it's basically a 16 by 9 format, almost 16 by 9. And you can also, of course, for anything you're going to put on social media, which would be Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, anything like that, you're never going to use that large of a photo anyway. You're going to be reducing that down. So technically there's no problem with just, if you're using it just as a secondary file, I would just leave it the small one. So it takes up less disk space would be the reason. Okay, color space, you've only got two choices. Leave it on sRGB. Image control, again, that's where you choose your black and whites and all that good stuff. I've got mine on positive. Again, I've also got it set up here. See right there, went right to it. Whoops. If I hit my adjust button, it's the last one. There it is, my image control. So, okay, let's go back. Peripheral illumination correction. I don't know what it is. Don't use it. Oh, I guess I do use it. I was thinking that should be off. I need to check into that one. D-range correction. I don't mess with that. That just sucks your battery probably. Noise reduction. Don't need that. If you're really doing a lot of long exposure or something, maybe, but I wouldn't because it's just it can actually screw up the photo. Anytime the camera makes adjustments for you, not always the greatest when it comes to resolution. Shake reduction, definitely on. That allows you to shoot down almost 30th, 40th of a second if you really needed to. Shake auto resistance, I've got that off. Horizon correction, definitely want that on. And that is that little green line. You can see right now I'm perfectly in. If I've got this thing all kind of, there we go. See it adjusted there. I just moved it a little bit. Now we're back to, you can see the green, meaning that I am good to go. Well, that's why my shutter's at 2,000. That's why that's flashing like that. If I go down there, you see that flashing right there? See that flashing? That means I do not have enough light. And if I take that photo, it's going to be dark. So you watch that flashing. I'm just going to adjust I can't give it any more f-stop. So I can keep going down on my shutter, down. There we go. It stopped flashing at 1/60th of a second. This should be a little brighter of a shot. Okay, that's it for the camera settings. So now we are going to get into our custom settings. That's our C settings. And to do this, we want to, first of all, everything that we're going to go through here, everything that we've gone in so far and adjusted, why don't we go ahead and save those settings to your user one, which is up top. So what you want to do is, now that we're down here on C and number one, save settings. We hit that. You can see I've got it already saved here in these. If you do not have one saved, all you do is you're allowed to save 6 different setups, but 3 buttons. Kind of confusing, but basically just to say you've got 3 settings and 3 buttons, just to work with the top 3 there if you're not quite following what's going on. I've got this set. If I wanted to reset this or resave it, which I will do right now, I do that typically a lot. So I would go here, just hit the OK button. Then you want to enter the name, so you hit OK again. Then you go through here and you enter whatever info you want to enter. I've got mine set as Jason, so let me just go ahead and retype that back in. Whoops. There we go. You have to hit this arrow button down there. And then it shows up here. It's not saved yet because this will just come up the first one. There will be nothing else there. It's basically asking you which one of these do you want to assign this to. The first one we have, which I typed in Jason, we want to assign to the user number 1, so we'll just go ahead and hit OK. Then it will data process completed. Now, everything you've done is saved. If you don't save that stuff, that all could end up going back to default. Every time you use the camera, you could potentially have to reset everything. You can rename things, recall. You can delete certain settings if you want, which I do not want to. Here, Manual mode dial setting. This is important, something I use. Manual mode dial setting. We want to hit that. You can see here, it comes by default, the front button, your front dial is your aperture, and your back dial is your shutter. That's also the way they have it on aperture priority. I don't like that, don't use it that way. Most cameras aren't set up that way. So I go down here to custom 2, which is your shutter is in the front, your shutter speed is in front, and your adjustment here is your aperture adjustment. So that's the way I like it. So that's the way I leave that. Your adjust mode setting. What we do is you hit that. It gives you 5 options. Again, when you look at this, you've got those 5 options right there. Each time you move over, then those options are displayed down here, and you make your choices down there. So you've got 5 options. You can either, and you can turn the wheel like that. Again, you can move over like that. You can touch these, however you want to do it. And so I've set up my 5 options. I'm not sure how they come, but I've set mine up. I always like to have that in focus. The adjustment mode, I've set mine up with the touch shutter, touch autofocus as number 1. Number 2 is the actual focus, and again, you scroll through and find the one you want, and you punch it. Number 3 I've got set is my AE metering. Number 4 is my crop, or my drive. I'm sorry, it's the drive. My drive, right there. And number 5 is the image control, which is the JPEG filters, the way I look at them. So again, when you go back to your camera now, easy access, I just hit this button right there. I can scroll, I can scroll left or right, and you can see I've got my touch autofocus, my focus, my AE metering, my drive, and my image control, as I just told you, was all set up right here. Okay, so that's how you set it up for easy access to the back camera. The next one is the function button. I told you I have that set up for snap. Again, you can set that for any number of things you want to set that for. It goes down and gives you every option. You need to find out what's good for you. Maybe you want to put the crop up there. Maybe you want to put your ISO up there. Whatever you want to put up there, you can do so. Maybe you want to put your JPEG control up there because you change a lot of times on what you shoot as a JPEG. Again, all that can be adjusted in camera. I've got it at set snap. So again, this is operating like a regular camera, but if I want to go immediately to snap focus, boom, I'm in snap focus mode. Hit it again, goes back to regular mode. Okay, so the shutter, that's the function button. The shutter button settings, obviously I leave that at autofocus and auto exposure lock. That's the way they normally come. 4-way control, that's just, that is what it is. Shutter button confirmation, that's the clicking sound or beeping. I don't like that. LED touch operation, that's incredibly important. If you don't have that on, you can't touch all these things. So you've got to have that on. Now for our touch autofocus. AF point, all that does is the autofocus just will do its job, point where it needs to point, and do its thing. If you put it on autofocus point and focus, then it will point and focus to wherever you want to point and focus to by simply touching. And again, we don't have a whole lot to focus on here, so we'll just go back to the center. And our focus and shoot means that now I've got it set to, once it focuses, it'll take the shot. And of course, I focused on nothing, so, or on white space, you can't do that. There we go. Now, there we go. So every time I touch this back, it's going to take a shot, which can be stealthy, it can be nice, it can be something you can use, for instance, when you're doing long exposure or anything like that. And when you go to full press snap, what that's going to do, this is the new firmware update. So what this does, when you have it on the touch screen on full press snap, all you have to do is touch it, and it's just going to take the snap photo. Again, you can see it's not in focus because I'm too close. I need to be at least a meter away. That's what this thing is set up for. But I don't have to use the shutter to do the snap. That could be very stealthy. You could be walking by and use your thumb, point the camera at somebody without them knowing, down at your hip or something, and just hit that. It takes the shot. There's no focusing. There's no meter reading. It's going to shoot whatever you've got set. So that's pretty cool, and that can be very, very handy. So I'm just going to put this back to autofocus, point, and focus. Okay, so that way, of course, Basically, it's just going to focus for me and not take the shot. Okay, now shooting info display. These are things you can go through. This is the type of stuff. I don't like histograms. I never use histograms. I don't need the highlight alert. I do like the electronic level, but basically, I've got enough on here by just I know how to use the camera. So you can go through that if you want. Playback info. I don't use histograms, don't use the guide for that, and don't need highlight alert. You can if you want, of course. Instant review, I've got mine set at 2 seconds, but for street, I always turn it off. That way I can immediately just keep shooting if I want to see what's going on and see what I've got. All I have to do is go up here to the playback button, push it, and you can scroll back through all of your photos, which all of these, of course, look the same. You can turn your wheel and go back through them quicker, all that good stuff. So there's my little Pentax K1000. There we go. Nice little camera. So we'll get out of there. Let's just go ahead and hit that again. Now we're back. Usually, most cameras just pointing and shooting would leave it a 2-second review so I can look down and see what I got. But again, on street photography, I would have that completely off. Quick zoom, don't use it, don't care. Focus magnification, that's on. If you're shooting here, you can hold down the display, or the display button down here, and it will zoom in, and you can start. Then you can see how in focus you are with something. Let's go up to. Whoops. Okay, let's get this back. Point here. There's our focus point. Now, if I want to see if that's really in focus, all I do is hold down this display button over here, the bottom right-hand corner, and now we're up here. Now I can really see that that's either in focus or not. And again, we have weak light here, so okay, you hit the menu and that gets you out of everything if you want. You can have that on. I haven't used it, but you can leave it on. Actually, it can suck more juice probably. Your grid style, either 3-3, which is your typical rule of thirds, or rule of fourths plus your diagonals. I leave it on diagonal. Don't really need it, but electronic level type, level and tilt. Again, that is that's down there. If I was tilting this, you would see another little arrow there that would tell you you're out of tilt. I just leave that on. Flicker reduction, don't care, don't need it. Okay, now, again, I would want to go through just in general because I save stuff and just hit save settings, Jason, and, enter name. You do that, and once you hit that again, it's going to save everything. One more time, just go ahead and save it. Not sure what we changed. I might need to go back and change them, and then just get back out of it. Now, the last thing we're going to look at here then, might be another thing, but right now, okay, our format. If you just want to format your card to where you delete everything on the card, you do have internal memory here. I'm not sure how many shots you can take, but you do have it in a case of emergency. But basically, memory card, not sure what's on there. You would hit that and execute. I'm not going to execute. I'm not sure what I've got on this card, so I'm not going to execute. But that's what that, and same thing for, okay, internal memory. I'll go ahead and execute because I shouldn't have anything on there I need. So execute, and boom, hit OK. It's being deleted, it's processed, it's ready to go, and if you do the memory card, it will also make sure that your memory card is good. You can create new folders. I'm not going to mess with any of that. Sequential numbering, reset numbering, copyright info. Okay, copyright info is on, and the copyright holder, you see I've got my name, Jason Dozier Photography, and you just go through and change any of that stuff that you would want to change, hit OK, whoops, and we're good to go. I didn't need to change mine. Store cursor position is on. That just means this OK button here. If you're over here, for instance, and you want to get back to the center, but for some reason you're not able to touch the center, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, but all you have to do is hit this OK button, and you see that little right down there, that U1 thing right there? Okay, I'm going to hit that button again. OK, OK again. So when I hit OK and that lights up, it allows you to then use the dial to move around, which would take forever, but you can use your dial to pinpoint your exact focus. Also, if you're way out here on your focus and you just need to get this pinpoint back to the center, when you've got this on, then you just hit OK and hold the OK down, and it goes back to center. Then hit OK again, it gets rid of that. So OK, it's there. OK, it's gone. So move that to there. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now that's on. And if I just want to get this back to center, hit OK again, and it's off. Oops. Or you can just do this. I want to get back to center. Boom, hit it back to center, just like that. So simple enough. Okay, guide display. Again, that's that. Well, that's the guide right there, as you see. Animation, I don't know what it is, don't care. LCD setting, I don't adjust that. You can. Outdoor view, I did adjust this all the way up. You can see it will make a difference. And especially to make this little video, I turned it all the way up. Power lamp, that's your lamp up here. I've got it on. If you really want to be stealthy, you can turn that off, but that way I can quickly look down and see the green dial tells me I've got the power on. Countdown, I believe that's for your, I don't know, to take your photos for your timer, 10-second timer, something like that. I don't use it. Sound effects, you might as well just leave them on and then just turn your volume all the way to off. Normally, I believe it comes in default at 3. Just turn your volume all the way off. Nobody can hear you taking a photo that way. Bluetooth settings, there you go if you want to use that. Wireless, there you go if you want to use that. Read up on it. I don't use it. I take the card out and put it in the computer every time. Smartphone link, you can link it to your smartphone. I don't believe, yeah, you can image transfer and all that. Knock yourself out. Power off, I put mine at 5 minutes. You can go down as much as you want. I don't want it to keep shutting off on me. Sleep mode is off. I don't want it to shut off on me. LCD auto dim is off. I do not want it to go dim. Firmware info, I have the latest firmware 1.41. Again, just that stuff. Dust removal, of course, I leave that on. Shutdown action, leave it on. It always will then, there we go. It will always then execute dust removal. There we go. It's completed. Good to go. Okay. Never can get that dust off there enough. Adjust your language. Date adjustment. Okay, here's something you need to know. Okay, you can change your adjustment there. Okay, this is month, day, year, or you can go day, month, year. So I've got month, day, year. You have to hit OK. Whoops. Okay, you move this over. And then you can go up and down and all that. I guess you don't have to hit OK until you're done, and then you hit OK. So there we go. You can reset everything, which I'm not going to do. One thing I did skip here, I guess, was obviously you can delete a photo. You can delete the RAW and the JPEG only, the RAW only, all images. I don't want to do any of that. You can protect things. Transfer, resize, crop, just all this is in camera. You have the ability to edit RAW files in camera. That's pretty cool. RAW development, make the JPEG whatever size you want, the ratio, just all that stuff you can kind of go in there and play with. And crop in camera if you want the actual JPEG crop. If you did not, this is if you're not doing things in Lightroom. If you want to do it all in camera, you can even edit the movie in there. So I don't mess with any of that, but you can certainly go in there and play around with it. Hitting the display, it took me 20 minutes one day to figure out what was wrong with the camera. This is normal display. Hit the button again. All the information goes away except for, okay, by the way, I'm in program mode with the movie. All the information goes away except the picture. Hit it again, everything goes away, what mode you're in. Hit it one more time, it goes black, okay? This is the most annoying thing. I could not figure out what the problem was. I had hit the menu button, accidentally hit the display button. So if your screen ever goes black, hit this display button and boom, there you go again. And again, you can adjust all that. If you're using this for video, then you'll need to dig into the menu and good luck with all that. Okay, so that was the... again, I don't know that there's anything. I do have, the only thing I do have this set at 30 frames per second just in case I would ever use it. That's really all there is. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the menu settings and how I have my camera set up. And again, I've got it all saved, so that's how I use the camera on the streets. That's how I basically would have it set up for anything I would want to do with it. It's a very cool camera, very capable camera, and I believe that's all I need to show you. Again, this adjustment up here, the adjustment button, that's very, very helpful to easily access everything you need. Again, the point means it's the display. Right now I've got it on just autofocus. It'll just focus. If I go down here, it'll focus and shoot. Down here, it's full press snap. Here, it's completely off. And up here, it's just, that just puts the focus point where you want to put it, but it does not focus. You might as well put it on auto point and focus if you're going to do that. Or auto focus, and shoot. So either way, that will work for you. If you have any questions about this or about this setup, don't hesitate to comment below. I'm trying to think if I've covered everything. I believe I've covered everything, but there certainly always could be something that was not covered. So again, guys, I do appreciate it. Leave your comments. Please like, please subscribe, hit the little bell there so that anytime a video comes out, the little bell will ding, you'll be notified. And by the way, the cup there, $24.99. It includes shipping in the United States. If you want one from the UK, let me know, and I'll find out what shipping would cost additional. That $24.99 includes the shipping on that. And by the way, I had these little cool little hats made up, but I'll show you here how bad this was. Sometimes you hit, like the coffee mug is really cool. Sometimes it's a miss. They literally just, if you can see this here, they literally, let me focus. They just put like a sticker on the front of here. It looks really tacky. I'm not going to tell you who did that, but that was pretty tacky. Looks cool, but I wouldn't wear it because it's tacky. It'd be cool if it was like embroidered, but again, it was probably $6 or something, $7. So the coffee mug was a little more. Therefore, it's not a sticker. It's actually printed on there, so it's very cool. So at any rate, guys, I do appreciate it, and if there's anything else you need, certainly do not hesitate to ask me, and I will try to answer any question I can. We covered snap focus. We covered pretty much everything I can think of on how this camera is set up for my street photography. So try it out for yourself. Let me know if you come up with something better or something different, or if I've instructed you on something wrong. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. We will see you next time.